Okay, guys, so welcome to the 2022 First Lego League Challenge kickoff. I'm Andrew. I'm one of the coaches of Project Bucephalus. Lyndall is my wife and the other coach. And with us, we also have Angie, who is the coach of Team Apollo.
Hi, guys.
So we've been around the block a few times. We're also joined by Fred, who's the head referee in Australia, and Luann, who is the director of First Australia. So they'll be reining us in if we go too far anyway.
Yeah, Andrew, can I just say one thing really quickly? I just wanted to say thank you. Team Apollo and Project Bucephalus have put a huge amount of time into this, and the rest of you are in for a really great day. So please take advantage of all of their expertise and let them help you make this the best season ever. So thank you again to Angie, Andrew, and Lyndall, because you guys are the best. And thanks to Fred for all the work you do as well.
Back at you. Okay. So who are we? Now, I've been told that we need to spend more time on this, so I won't brush through it as quickly as I normally do. So Bucephalus is from Wollongong in New South Wales. And Angie, where are you guys?
Team Apollo, Central Coast, New South Wales.
So many moons ago, I believe we made a trip up to Gosford to introduce a bunch of homeschoolers to how FLL worked. We ran in a scout hall, and things sort of escalated from there.
Yeah, we definitely did. One team first year, two teams second year, three teams third year.
Yeah. So this is us. We've been around for quite some time, doing a lot of different seasons. We run our FLL team. We've done so since 2010. This is our 13th FLL season. We've attended 12 national tournaments. We've qualified for 11 internationals. We've run 7 regionals. And between us, we've been judges, referees, teachers, you name it, we've probably done it when it comes to the first program. And we're also FRC mentors, just because we weren't enough gluttons for punishment to start with. Team Apollo, you want to run through this, Angie?
Sure. So this is Team Apollo's 8th season that we're just beginning. We've attended 6 national FLL tournaments. We've qualified for 6 international FLL tournaments. And we've also run 5 FLL regional events. And similarly, we have judges, referees, mentors all on our team. Not brave enough quite to go to FRC yet. We send all our guys onto the TDU team to do FRC. I'm not quite that brave.
Right. So what we're going to run through here is a little bit about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, and a bit of philosophy behind what we're trying to achieve here. So we're about to cover a lot of information. So yeah, prepare to drink from the fire hose. Now, normally pre-COVID, we'd talk about FLL and we'd do hands-on lessons. Hands-on lessons are very hard with a group this size, so we've sort of cut the breakout workshops. But if anyone wants to do that, send us an email and we can organize something where we're not dealing with such a large group. So our goal here is to basically provide enough information for everyone to learn something, narrow it down where we can, but generally cover the most material. Now, the engineering notebook and the team guide that you can get from the dashboard can supplement a lot of what we provide. And we are going to be releasing these slides as a PDF. We'll put them up on the website. And this whole talk is going to be put up on YouTube when we're done. Now, I do also want to point you to the 2021 FLL conference. It's something we did during COVID. It's linked to from our website. There is a lot of information on getting started and best practices in FLL. This is the type of thing that lasts That's always useful. So take a good look at that if you want more. There will be some duplication in what we've done, but there's also a bunch of stuff we didn't have time to cover, particularly the best practices. So have a good look at that. So yeah, we're going to cover as much as we can. If you can put questions on the Slack channel, we'll be able to answer as many as we can when we get to each break section. We're also going to have a longer question time at the end of when we're done with each particular session. We are going to start with an overview of project design and core values, and then we're going to go through the robot rules. After lunch, we're going to look deeper into the various FLL aspects, including what to expect from an in-person tournament, because I am predicting there's going to be an awful lot of you that have been doing FLL for a while, but have never yet had to actually be at an in-person event. So that's going to be fun. So the goals of doing this: one, we want to improve the overall quality of the FLL competition. This is something we've wanted to do ever since our first year. So a bit of history for you. When Bucephalus started, we came along to our first event and we were champions, and that was like, hooray, we have no idea what we just did, but that's awesome. We must be pretty good. Then we got an offer to go to Delft to compete in the Netherlands, and we thought this is pretty cool. And when we got there, we got our butts kicked pretty badly. So we decided at that point we wanted to make sure that as many teams as possible had the opportunity to compete and be competitive. And that brings us into number 2, which is we want to reduce rookie errors. So if it's something simple that a veteran team can solve in about 5 seconds, we don't want you to have your season taken out because of it. So that's one of the things we will be talking about in various other slides. Also, we want to enable you guys to succeed. We want you guys to have a successful season. And we want your kids to feel like they've achieved something. So that's basically what we're looking at. So here's a quick summary of the schedule. Yeah, moving through all that stuff. There'll be a half-hour break at lunchtime. And we are going to also talk about how to run a tournament at 1:30. It's not as scary as it might sound. So if anyone, I know we've got a bunch of teams that are still trying to find themselves a tournament. So that may be something useful to you. Right. So that brings us into what we're expecting and some philosophy stuff about why we're doing this. So this is an old rule. It's not around anymore, but it used to be rule GP1. You are gracious professionals. You compete hard against problems while treating all people with respect and kindness. If you join First Lego League with a main goal of winning a robotics competition, you're in the wrong place. So I think that's still relevant to today's competition, and it does speak a lot about what the goals should be. It's great to do well, but if that's your main goal, winning is your goal, you're not going to have a lot of fun. So there are a couple of caveats on everything you're about to hear. First off, we freely admit we do not know everything. Right? Everything that we're presenting here is based solely on the experiences of Project Bucephalus and Team Apollo. We are not all knowing, and we still learn stuff. So do bear that in mind. Also, we're not perfect. Every idea we come up with can be improved, and we're quite happy to change our minds or be proven wrong. Also, we ourselves never stop learning, so every point we make is in a constant state of improvement and reassessment. That's part of why it's so much work to organize these things. We've got to go back and double check that what we said is still relevant. Okay, so what you should and should not be doing. As an FLL team, you definitely should be using your own creativity to create a unique robot. Right. So being inspired by other teams is fine, but go beyond copying, try and improve it. The old FRC motto, steal from the best, invent the rest, applies. 2, You should be free to make your own mistakes and discoveries. That's how we learn. You should be able to deal with failure as well as success. And that can actually be harder than it looks. Anyone that's ever had to be a referee on an FLL table can see how devastating it is to kids when stuff doesn't work the way it should. And we get thrilled by kids that it all goes horribly wrong, but they keep their heads up and they just keep trying. And also, everyone should be seeking new challenges each season, new goals. You shouldn't just be repeating yourself. And a lot of that is reflected in the rubrics and the way teams are judged. Now, that said, there are also some teams shouldn't, right? To us, a team should not be failing because of undetected, easy to fix issues, right? Unplugged cables are the #1 cause of robots going wrong, followed closely by it worked at home and the mat is different. So we need to make sure those things don't happen. And if you're going to fail, you should try for something spectacularly new. If we can look at your problem and have no idea what's going on, that's the type of problem that we want to have happen, not the you guys are having an immense amount of trouble and we can fix it in 5 seconds. We do not want a team to be demoralized, right? There's no inspiration when a team fails continually and nobody understands. We also don't want teams to be on their own, right? There is a ton of knowledge and support in the FIRST community. If you put something on Slack saying, help, this is going on, you will be inundated in replies very quickly, and not just from us. There are a lot of veteran coaches out there. I'll do a shout out to Ben Stanley at this point, who's very good at sharing everything he knows. So yeah, ask for help. It's always a good idea. Okay, Lyndall, are you ready to take over from here?
Yep, I can take over.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to give an overview of what the FLL competition is about. So Andrew, are you giving me control?
Go for it.
All right. All right, so for our adults, this is, I guess, a different competition. If you haven't been around FIRST before, this is sort of a different competition in that teams that fail succeed on their own. So adults that do too much actually hurt a team's chances of doing well. And judges can tell if adults have been too involved. It is actually quite obvious. So remember, this is about the kids and what they do, not about how brilliant or well their innovation project is, or that their robot does absolutely everything on the table and that they've got super advanced programming or anything like that. This is about what the kids are learning and what their journey is. It's not about what the adults do at all. In fact, PB will often give ceremonial duct tape to the adults before they go into a judging room, just to make sure that they, they keep quiet. Mentor's role is to teach skills, and then the kids, you decide how they use it. Now, you can teach them a line following algorithm if they don't know how to do one. Then they've got to decide whether or not they want to use it. How a team behaves does affect their score. So during the event, there will be people around who are watching the kids, in the judging. It's not just about in the judging session. It's about how they are at the table, how they're at practice tables, interacting with the other teams, what they're doing, how they're behaving. All right. And of course, what we learn is more important than what we win. So again, what the kids are learning through this whole process of doing this challenge is much more important than what they win. They should be celebrating their small wins, their first points on the table, when they have their innovation problem, when they've come up with a solution, Those are the wins that they should be celebrating. And of course, it's more than robots. We are building kids, we are building character, we are not necessarily building robots. All right, so first has a set of core values, and we'll be looking at these a bit deeper later on, but this is what I guess it's all about: the teamwork, the inclusion, the impact, the fun, the discovery, and the innovation. This is the crux of it all. So at an event, there are some required awards. So each event will have these, and they are in different areas of robot, innovation project, and core values. One award is available in each category only, and each team is restricted to only one award. However, the robot game is separate. You can be the top robot game and still get another award. All right. There is also a coach mentor award that your students need to submit and write something about you. And I hope you'll hand that in at the tournament, and the tournament director will collect those and pass them on to the judges. And yeah, so there's an award for you guys as well, which is great. All right. Depending on the size of the tournament, there may be a first, second, or third place award for any of these. Usually the larger tournaments will have those. Then there is some optional awards. So these are usually held back for the larger tournaments. So they are things like the Breakthrough Award. So this is a team that might not have scored top in any particular area, but the judges are recognising that they've made significant progress in all areas. The Engineering Excellence, again, it's looking at all the areas of the competition. The Rising All-Star is not a rookie award necessarily. This is for a team that the judges notice and expect great things from in the future. It could go to a veteran team, it could go to a rookie team. That's up to the judges to decide that this is a rising all-star. And then there's the Motivate. So this is a team that embraces the culture of first. So really, really strong on their core values, really having a great time. They may not have had the best project or the best robot run, but they're having a great time and doing great things with first.
So Linda, I think we've got some people coming in. If you could just I'll do this one. If you want to take a quick look at what's happening.
No, we're all good.
We're all good because there was an.
So I can see in the chat that someone's asking, how would you define a large tournament? So tournaments where there's about 40 teams generally have the optional awards. I think somewhere between 30 and 40 teams would have the optional awards. A smaller tournament would probably be like 16 teams, I think. I don't know if Luann is still on. She may have gone. Yeah. So yeah, it just depends on the size of the tournament as to what they are. So I think 16 is just the main awards.
First sets the rules, so we'll find
Yes.
out what that is this season.
Yes.
I will say, yeah, those numbers are about right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So then there is the Champions Award. So this is the top award, and it's awarded to a team that has the best overall ranking in robot game, robot design, innovation project, and core values. That's all 4 areas. So each area, each section is worth 25% of the overall score. So if you score really well in project, but don't have a really great robot design, you might not get up there for the champions. But if you are good across everything and you score well in everything, that's what they're looking at. So your robot game does form part of the championship score, which was new a couple of years ago. Yeah.
So based on the tournament size, a few teams excel in all categories and they progress to the next level. So depending on how big the tournament is will depend on how many teams get to progress. So usually the championship team will progress, and then depending whether it's a small tournament of say 16 teams or a large one of 40 will depend on how many teams progress. Also will depend on how many slots are available at the next event. So at the, going from a regional to nationals, if nationals has a cap on say 60 teams and there's 20 regionals running that have got to feed into that nationals, that will affect the number of teams that progress from an event. And again, from the nationals to international, again, it will depend on how many international slots there are. When we first started, there was 2 international slots given to Australia 13 years ago. I think now, when prior to COVID, there was at least 10 or 12 international slots available. So there was quite a few there. Can someone let the person in? Thank you. All right, so to advance, it follows the championship criteria. Also, as you go to each level, judging gets harder. It gets harder to advance. Judges are looking closer at you, I guess. You could have teams that don't actually win any awards, but do get to progress because they're looking at the championship criteria. So when it comes to the robot game, the highest score will get the Robot Performance Award. Gracious professionalism score is counted in the core values. This is what we'll talk about is something new that's happening at the tables. Robot game is only 25% of the team's championship award score. Other than that, it has no effect on the competition. All right. So make sure your parents understand this. We've had many parents go, oh, but they scored second in the robot game. Why haven't they gotten anything? Yeah, they might have had a brilliant robot run, but they may not have gotten the championship criteria. Again, first place in the robot game doesn't mean that they're going to get the championship. You have to do well in everything. All right, so when it comes to the competition, they have a judging session, which is 30 minutes long. We'll go through each of the sections in a bit more detail, but it's the same format all the time. Whenever you go to a judging session, whether it's at a regional or an international, it's the same format. They'll get a few minutes to come in and set up. So they need to bring everything in with them, any robot, their computer or laptop, tablet, whatever's got their programming on it, any props that they need for their presentation, their model or drawings, posters, anything that they're bringing in, they need to bring in. If they're doing a slideshow or something like that, they need to be able to set that up themselves. The coach cannot do anything. The coach cannot carry anything in. The coach cannot set up the data projector for them. Your kids can't do the AV stuff. Don't do it. All right. Stick to cardboard posters. All right. You'll then have, they'll have 5 minutes to present their innovation project, 5 minutes of questions, 5 minutes to talk about their robot. That's their strategy. That's how they've done their missions, what they've done, how maybe show a mechanism or attachment on how they've done, talk about what they've done, show their code. They do not run their robot on a table in the judging session. There is no mission models or anything like that to run the robot. They're talking about their process, their design, all of that. And then there's a couple of minutes in core values reflection, and we get feedback from the judges. All right, so everyone is limited to a 30-minute judging session. You will be assessed on all 3 areas during the judging session. There is a rubrics that every judge will be scoring you against. And the judges will meet to deliberate after. So each set of judges will see I think 3 to 4 teams, and then they'll rank their teams, and then they'll meet up with all the other judging pods to assess the overall rankings. As it comes to results, what happens in the deliberations is secret. You will never find out where your team ranked. Again, you only get one award except for the robot performance. And as we said, robot number 1 may not advance, and robot 2 scoring may get nothing, and a team may advance without an award. So Andrew, you wanted to say something here?
Yeah, I will point out as a coach, the thing you can do to reduce grief on tournament day is make sure your team parents understand this before you get there. Right, this is a very different style of tournament. It's a weird thing sometimes, and I've seen plenty of tournaments where the number 1 robot did not advance, and there have been plenty of times where even robots 2, 3, and 4 got nothing, but the team that ranked 8th was the declared champion and they advanced. They didn't get anything except, Champions Award. And sometimes I think I've actually seen the 12th place team on the robot table advance, didn't get any trophy except you're going through. It happens all the time. So make sure your parents are prepared for that, and your kids too.
All right. Well, actually, Andrew, we're handing over to you now.
Okie dokie. So are there any questions on the Slack? Because I can't see that while you're running my screen.
No, Andrew says no.
No, none at the moment.
Sweet. So are there any questions on the structure? Because this is probably a good time to ask for that. Post it in the chat if you can't get on Slack.
So any people who have come in, who have joined in as we've been going, can you please put your video on if you can? We need that on for child protection reasons as we're recording this video, this session. We've had someone describe robot number 1. What are we talking about there? What we're talking about there is the top robot performance
Highest
game.
scoring robot in the competition.
Yes. So the robot scores are, I guess, public knowledge. Everyone gets to see how your scores are going, which robots ranking in number 1. But you don't get to see, you will not know your ranking in the judging.
Yeah. So because of that, a lot of teams will associate how you went in the robot ranking as how they went overall. And I guess what we're trying to describe here is there's a very big disconnect there, and it results in kids being unhappy. Now, it is entirely possible that the first place robot team may be the champion team. That does happen as well, but it's not a guarantee. Also, one thing I often say about the awards and stuff, say you get the programming or the robot design trophy, you have no idea whether you got that because you were the best in that category or somebody else was better, but they got something else, right? Each team only gets 1 award other than the robot performance award. So that makes things unusual. So be prepared for it. Most teams, in fact, will go to a tournament and not get a trophy. So just be prepared. This is about you versus the table, you versus what you learn, and you versus what you discover during the season. The handing out the plastic is always fun, but that's not what it's about.
All right. Do teams get a participation award? You should get a certificate, a participation certificate for each of your team members that you will fill in. So at competition, you should get a little, I guess, a packet handed to you when you register your team. You hand in your consent and release forms. You get a little packet that will tell you what you judge, where your judging room is, what time it is, what time your robot games are. All that information in there should be some, I guess, participation certificates for the kids.
Also, the field kit this year, again, they'll have special Lego pieces and tiles for all the kids. Yeah, so there is stuff there. And I mean, our team, I've seen some teams hand out mission models to kids as trophies for the season, or they build their own. Some of the designs are pretty good. If you hop on Google, you'll find a few good ones. So yeah, Ben Stanley from the Robot Innovators has just reminded us that, yeah, they got top scoring robot, didn't understand the core values or project or robot design and didn't advance. So it does happen. It happens a lot.
So we'll be, the person who's asking about the core values, how that's judged, we'll be talking about that in a separate session. So
yeah,
just stay tuned.
This was just the highlights. Okay, so we'll move on to deal with the overview of the project. So just to bear in mind, guys, there is going to be a follow-up session on this after lunch. So this is just the basics, the highlights, how you go about making it happen. Then we do a bit of a deeper dive later on. So, yeah. Right. So, as per usual, finding out what exactly the project is a little bit difficult. Probably the first question I get a lot of during this is, what exactly are we supposed to do? So this is drawn from the game overview document. So from the machines that move us to the electronics that connect us to the ways we power our cities and towns, energy is essential. So where does it come from? How is it generated? How does it get to you? How do you use it? So what they're looking for is energy journeys, right? An energy journey is where energy comes from and how it's distributed, stored, and used. So that is incredibly broad. But there is, we'll get to that in a little bit, there's also probably a lot broader than you actually think. So you have to identify that problem, identify any problem relating to an energy journey. You then got to research it and possible solution ideas. You never want to be the team that only ever has one idea, one problem the whole way through, because the judges are specifically interested in how did you pick what you're going to solve. You then have to design and create a solution that improves your energy journey. Now, to be really clear here, they are not expecting you to invent something brand new. They could be, you could quite easily just improve something that already exists. Now, those that have been around a while, you'll remember in previous years, they had design and create technology that could improve your energy journey. They've removed that word. Now it is design and create a solution. That word technology caused a lot of problems, right? You then have to share your ideas, get feedback, and iterate. So again, you never want to be the team that does the idea, presents it off, and the judges say, who did you share it with? And they look blankly at them. And then on tournament day, you've got to create an effective, creative presentation that describes your solution at the event. As Ben said, if the first time you share is at a tournament, you're doing it wrong. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll buy that one. Right, so that is the outline of what they are expecting. Now, there's a few bit of extra information that go with that. Right. First off, your job is to provide guidance, but let the kids pick the project. It makes a huge difference if the kids are passionate or interested in what they're researching. I have unfortunately met a few teams that the coaches clearly are the ones driving the project, and it shows, and it spoils some of the experience for the kids, right? Also, the innovation project is about discovery. So that's the big thing. It's not Shark Tank. It's not make $1 million with this cool product that'll save the world. It's about what they learned doing it, right? And this one is big yellow and highlighted. You are not restricted to the project sparks. If you haven't seen those yet, they're mentioned in the robot game rulebook and in the game overview. They're supposed to be about ideas that spark discussion. They are not meant to be a restricted list. That's really important. And this one is also really important. Superpowered is about energy, not just electricity. Right? What types of energy are there? Potential, kinetic, thermal, right? You run through it. So one of the descriptions I'm using when I describe this to students is, yeah, you can look at harvesting energy from pick a location. Energy that otherwise goes to waste, you can generate it and you can make electricity and put it in a battery or a grid. That's perfectly okay. But you also have energy in your body that is made by food. You eat food, you get energy. I then go on a tennis court and I hit a ball with my tennis racket. The tennis racket transfers that energy to the ball. That is an energy journey. One thing that one of the kids asked me about, and I'm pretty sure that I would allow this as a judge, they're talking about neural energy. They're talking about how you can control computers with thoughts, or for people with paraplegics controlling computers with neural interfaces and things like that. That's all energy. So just to be really, really clear, superpowered is about energy, not just electricity. I'm assuming a lot of teams are going to be doing power generation of some kind, but don't think that's all you can do. So has anyone got any questions on that? Anything on Slack?
No, I've answered what's there.
Excellent. Okay, so how do we pick a project? Well, we're going to do a little bit of a demonstration here. So I'm going to need some volunteers from the audience. So can I get maybe 6 coaches to put a thumbs up if they're willing to speak? Otherwise, I might just grab the fluffy Terminators. Have we got some people?
We have Shelby.
Yay.
Thanks, Shelby. We got any other volunteers? You
Where
don't have to do much. Oh, Elvra.
Vera?
Ben's been volunteered. Yeah, I'll take that.
So you can unmute your mics, those people.
Yep. Okay, so you should all now be able to see this Excel spreadsheet I've got up. This is the process we use to pick projects, and it works pretty well. So the first thing I'm going to ask, we're going to ask our kids a couple of questions about where they come from and what they do. Right, is the spreadsheet still up, Lyndall?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So we don't yet know what we want to do. The kids will look at this, and probably the coaches too, and be a tad overwhelmed. So let's have a starting point. Can I have a hobby from each of you?
Scouting.
Yep, we have scouting. Yep. Ben, give me a hobby. Something you do for fun.
Lego. Say it again. It seems I'm always renovating something.
I apologize in advance if I'm spelling badly. Who else we got, Lyndall?
Horses.
Elvira. Yep.
It's Elvira, Lyndall.
Elvira, sorry.
Do we have
Horses.
horses? Yep. We got one more. Now, is there any others, Lyndall, or is that it?
Hey, I'm happy to be involved.
Yep. Name a hobby.
Yoga.
Okay. Right. So at which point I'll ask about someone in your family's professions. So your profession or a parent's profession or a child's profession. So starting from the top, Shelby, what do you got?
Data science.
Um,
That's really sad because it's almost the same. Regulatory science. So,
She's a vet. Say she's a vet.
okay, put down veterinarian.
That. There we go.
Did I do myself?
Ben?
Sorry, our connection dropped out for a little bit.
Okay, no worries. So,
So I'm a software engineer.
He can't tell you what he does though.
yeah. And the yoga person?
Yoga person. I'm Lauren. Hi.
Lauren, hi. I can't see the, all I can see is the
Sorry.
screen.
I'm a teacher.
Okay. Right. Then last question. Something unique about your community, where you live, where you go to school. So I would start with, like, we do some work with rural teams. So that's always an interesting one. What else have we got? Shelby?
Well, I live in a rural area, so now you've taken away my thing.
I'm sorry.
Which is why I'm having internet connectivity. Let's say I have to do a lot of driving because I live in a rural area.
Yep. Well, okay, so I'll put that in there. Yep. Ben.
Elvira?
Well,
Oh.
And you go first. I'm thinking hard.
The problem is Elvira and I are too much like each other. So.
well, that's okay. So you guys, are you the group at the school?
No.
No, we're the AC.
Scouts.
Oh,
The
yeah,
Scouts.
Scouts, right. Yep. Sorry.
Sorry.
my bad.
Yep.
Well, there you go.
Andrew,
Yo.
look, so we live quite close to Constitution Hill, where apparently the early settlers had a bit of a rebellion, although I can't give you the details of exactly what.
Yep. There we go. Otherwise makes life. So is that everybody, Lyndall?
Lauren.
Lauren.
I live where there's a lot of hills to climb.
Okay. So by asking these questions, we've now got a bunch of areas we can start looking at. So scouting. Okay. I can think of two things that are power related immediately. Power on camp, power when hiking. And if we want to go into,
Angie wants to add something to that one.
yeah.
I just wanted to add in there for those who are scouting people, in part of my team's research, did you know there is such thing as an electricity tree? All those times in scouting when they say there's not, there is.
Is that one of those wind trees?
The moringa tree. There's a great video on YouTube. I suggest you all watch it.
Googling it now.
Well, electric tree. Right. This is all stuff that uses energy. And then food when camping. So that could be covering eating or food preservation. Those are all potential energy journeys. Renovations.
Oh, there's lots of power stuff here.
There's lots of power stuff. But
There's power tools.
Yep.
There's electrical requirements, power demand calculations. Potential energy.
now, what about then if you had a potential energy situation, like a non-tool based or power based one, Can you tell me an energy issue to do with renovations? Like potential energy or something can collapse, stuff like that.
Oh, whenever you've got things produced that are black, you always things could fall off and could cause somebody some grief if they lost their potential energy and converted it to kinetic energy. Although if you're thinking of kinetic energy, hammers are quite dangerous too.
Yep. So there you go. How to not how to handle being hit by a hammer.
Another one, sound energy.
There we go.
Power tools, you can generate quite a lot of noise and the neighbours can get quite upset. But also you can damage your own hearing unless, of course, you wear personal protective equipment.
Very good. Okay, so horses. Well, again, feeding, moving, getting kicked by.
Yeah, definitely. That's always a big one. It's a slightly different area, but looking at moving, but probably the biggest thing is moving their food rather than the actual source of food.
There we go.
But you've also got issues with the footing. So you've got water movement, and let's just say I might have lost my boots the other day in the mud.
Yep. So you can probably see how we'd go through the rest of this. Rural, we've already got the suggestion of long driving. A farm or historical heritage. How do you improve, like one of the kids looking at this one, improve insulation in a heritage building. That's always a fun one to deal with. So I think we're about at the limit for what we're able to do here. Or Hilly, what geography benefits are in a hilly area as opposed to a flat one? So just by asking those questions, I've now opened up a huge, huge pile of areas where kids could start to look, and not one of those has got to do with renewable energy or I want to go look at power plants or anything like that.
Andrew, it might be worth mentioning as well that there's been chat on the global FLL page, Facebook page, about it's not just about energy generation or where you source it from or anything like that. It's also about energy efficiency.
Yes.
And your point about improving insulation in buildings is sort of leads toward that, is how do we, the electricity that we already use, how do we reduce our usage of that by making whatever it is more efficient?
Yep, exactly. And on that note too, yeah, just you're talking about the FLL Share and Learn page?
Yes.
Yep. So just that's a good source of information. Just be aware it's an American-based one, and a lot of the rules and stuff they quote may not apply here.
Correct.
So just be very, I'll toss that, I'm going to mention that warning later on, but just be aware of that, guys. You're competing in Australia. So Fred and Luann are basically setting the rules, what happens here, and that may be different. Like particularly in Robot Game, Fred has the say-so unless there's an update. Cool. So
yeah, I will say, we're not trying to make rulings different in Australia to otherwise. Like if there is a global ruling, we follow that. Just want to, make that happen.
We have had some people go, oh, but the Americans allowed it. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah, if an American local head referee says it, it doesn't.
Yes, I'll go for that one. Sorry, Fred.
So there is a question on the chat. My team watched an inspirational video about how renewable energy is not going to save the world. There is a major misconception in the community how renewable energy is the solution to save the world. Can we solve the problem of fixing the misconception? i.e. sharing with the community all the challenges and problems with renewable energy? Is that enough of an innovation project?
Okay, so that is actually a good question because we actually get a bit of that every year. Can your solution be an education program?
Right.
It happens. Now, I'm not going to say yes or no on that one because that's not really my role. But what I would say is something like this. If your team can relate what they're doing to an energy journey, that makes it viable. The risk with doing what we call an education campaign is that they will often, a team will often produce, oh, here's our poster, and that's it. That's not gonna do very well compared to really well thought out solutions. So does that make sense, Angela? Awesome. So yeah, an educational campaign is a viable solution, but hypothetically, if you're going to do something like that, you need to go take a look at how to grab people's attention. You're going to want some time on psychology. You're going to want to show that you considered what you were doing and why you did it. And you're probably going to want to have a complete campaign for different channels, web, print, billboards, stuff like that. So if you're going to do something like that, you have to leave no stone unturned.
Right. The other question is, what about stored energy?
Yep, definitely. This is about energy. So all you have to do for a project to be viable, your kids have to relate it to an energy journey. And if you're looking at stored energy, well, that's energy. It's got to come from somewhere. It's got to be held somewhere, and it's got to go somewhere. Right. Are there any questions on that little process of how we pick a project? Cool. No, I didn't ask
no further questions.
Sorry?
No further questions.
Good. So I didn't ask question 4, which is what are you interested in? But I hopefully have demonstrated to you how to start getting how to get a start on picking a project. Okay.
All right. So up to the how or what happens at a competition in the way of judging. So as we said before, there is 5 minutes to do a presentation, and you'll have 5 minutes on questions from the judges. So in a judging session, I think I didn't say this before, there will be at least 2 up to 4 judges in a judging session. Each of those judges may be looking at one particular area. So there'll be one judge who might be asking all of the research innovation project questions. There might be one judge who asks all the robot design questions, and there'll be one judge who will be looking at the core values. That's sort of generally how the judges sort of work. You might not know which one it is. All 3 judges may ask questions about your project, and that's great. All right.
So innovation project. I'll flick you across, Linda. There you go.
Yeah. All right. So yes. So when you do a presentation to the judges, you can do that however you like. You can go all out theatre production if that's what you want, but they only have 5 minutes to do it. You need to be ready to start on your presentation as soon as possible from walking in to the judging room. So get in there, put everything down, like put the robot down, the computer down, and get ready to do the presentation. Now, everyone in the team has to be involved in the presentation in some way. So if you've got a team of 10 kids, they all need to be involved. Now, we do understand that there are kids who don't like talking or are a bit shy, have anxiety issues, can't stand still, things like that. Well, maybe that child is the one that if you do a slideshow, we'll run the slideshow. They don't actually have to talk then too much during the presentation. They still need to be able to answer all the questions, but that sort of takes the spotlight off them. Or maybe they're going to be the third rock from the sun, or, hold up the poster and point to things like that. You can be creative with those kids who are a bit anxious on talking. However, if you have a whole team of kids who won't talk, you're going to have to get even more creative because they do need to present. So in your presentation, they need to cover all the things that we'll go through in the rubric in a minute. So they need to define what their problem is, define what their solution is, let the judges know who they've shared their idea with, show them their either model or drawing or whatever it is that they've created to help explain their solution. All those things need to be in that 5-minute time limit. So just remembering, if the coaches are in the room with the kids, everyone who comes into the room, that takes time to in their 30-minute time. So if you're going to have a horde of thousands come in, you don't want that. And also they can't talk. It's about the kids.
Now, I'll just pop in there the emphasis on the second word on that last line. Coaches may be allowed to accompany the team. I don't think I made that strong enough. Depending on room sizes, there may be restrictions on who can go in. So you need to talk to your tournament director about that one. So yeah, be prepared for something like that.
All right, so the rubric, this is what the judges use to score your team. It's the same for everyone all around the world. This is what they're using. So, and at the end of the competition, it may not be on the day of the competition, but within a week of the competition, you should receive your rubric back. So this is like the score sheet, and this is how the judges rated your team. So there is the rankings: beginning, developing, accomplished, and exceeds. So if you notice down the side, exceeds is blank. There's no criteria. That is for the judges you have to really wow them and see see what's going on. We have different categories. So there's 5 categories: identify, design, create, iterate, and communicate. Which is the engineering process. That's the same for the innovation project and the robot design. And then the judges will give you some feedback and comments. So the first one is identify. So this is where the team has clearly defined a problem and it's been well researched. So depending on how well your team defines their problem, whether it's really easy for them the judges to understand what it is they're trying to solve, or like basically how they understand it, and then how much research they did. If they just did Google, they're probably not going to score as well in the research, but if they've gone and spoken to professionals, done experiments, things like that, that's a higher scoring thing. Then we have design. So have they gotten ideas from all sorts, like from everyone? Have they planned it? How well is it being planned? Things like that. Is there a plan? Is it clear? Did they stick to the plan? Was it efficient? Things like that. Then we have create. So team developed an original idea or built on an existing one with a prototype model or drawing to represent their solution. So have they taken their idea and done something with it, or is it just an idea that's out there? How developed have they been? How detailed have they been with their drawing? Have they done up a CAD design or a technical drawing, or is it just some scribble on a page? Have they made a model? And the model could be Lego, it could be cardboard, it could be a prototype that they've made, could be anything. 3D printed. All right. Lots of development is what they're requiring.
So I'll duck in here too. If you're reading the rubrics, take a good look at the words they're using. Like with the create, minimal development, partial development, clear development. If you aim for what's in the accomplished column, you'll do well.
All right, and then we iterate. So did the team share their idea? Did they get feedback? And then did they include any improvements in their solution? You know, did they take what was their original idea and how has that developed into what they're presenting now to the judges? And yeah, basically, is there a clear process of them developing their solution here? And then communicate.
Go back a step there, Lyndall.
Yep.
Right. So this is, you notice the and, it's bold, it's big in there for a reason. They want to have lots of people check stuff out. So make sure your kids, that's a really easy way to score high. See the or the and. Go for that.
Yes, so professionals. Use them. Use people in your community. Another source of way that you could use your parents. Maybe you've got an electrician as a dad, and maybe they can talk to the team about things that they have or problems they have. Maybe if we're looking at the horse riding, maybe one of the parents owns an agistment or is a vet or something like that, and they can talk to the kids. So that's a professional as well. And communicate. So this is just one part of it, is how effectively and creative they were in presenting their solution and its impact on others. So did they bore the judges to tears, or did they do something memorable? All right. And what is the solution and its potential impact on others? All right. Is what they're doing is it effective? Do they show their solution and its impact during their presentation?
So I'll point out here something we usually point out. It is really hard to have an engaging presentation that is also really effective. So if your kids can do that, if they score high in both categories here, they've put together a really good presentation. I will be showing some examples later on of presentations and some hints and tips on how to do good ones. So just bear that in mind.
All right. And I think we're now up to Angie and core values. Is there any questions though first? Oh, hang on, sorry. Documentation, very important thing I forgot about. This is a way to help the judges remember you. Also, before I said that the judges are in pods and then they come together and talk to other judges. So if they've got a simple one-page handout about your team, about your project, things like that, then they can show that to the other judges and get really excited about, hey, this team did this really cool innovation idea. Look at all the places they've shared it with, all the people, isn't this cool? And the other judges can see that, or they might need that bit of paper to remember that, oh yeah, that's right, that team with the green t-shirts did the project on pools or whatever. So something to help them. So you can do a one-page handout that's nice and simple with your team photo and a little bit of information about all your different things, or you can do something a bit more detailed, which is what our team tend to do. We put absolutely everything that we've done in it. Now, the judges will not have time to look through this. They do not have time, but it is a place that we find that because we're a homeschool team, it's really great for the kids to be able to put that together and then look back on what they've done and accomplished during the season as well. And because our team has managed to get to international level so many times, we start at the regional level preparing for that. If we get to international, we don't want to have to do a whole lot more work. So we start at the beginning.
So we'll emphasize here, this is overkill for most teams. You do not have to do something like that. This one pager is sufficient, but if your kids want to do something between those two, feel free. Anyone that's ever seen one of our research project logs, what was it? We nearly got up, we're routinely over 100 pages.
Oh, I think this season, by the time we got to the APOC, we were over 200 pages in our research book.
Yeah.
Which is way too many for any judge to look at.
Yeah. Okay, so that is the end of the innovation project overview. We do robot design next. So has anyone got any questions on that? Ben, is that a compliment or is that a critique?
But you may take that comment however you like it. It is spoken in the spirit of gracious professionalism.
All right. So I have been asked on the Slack, is there a copy of PB's project log available for us to view, not to copy?
Yeah, we can give you, we can put an old one out for reference, I guess.
Yep.
Okay, so BGHS has asked a question, what subtopics do you include? We basically just go through the rubrics and use those as headers.
Yes.
So like
We do a summary page at the beginning about what the project is. So the kids will define on the first page what their problem is and what their solution is, and we'll list their resources. You're going backwards, Andrew?
Yep, to look at this.
Okay, they'll list their like resources and things like that. So an overview, so a quick, this is the highlights, and then they'll go into each of the different areas. So if they speak to a professional, before they go and speak to the professional, they'll sit down and work out what questions they want to ask the professional before they go, and then they'll scan in their questions and answers, and then they'll also write a brief report about what they found out.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah. So if you look at this to answer the question, so summary, identify the problem, list the research, list ideas, planning, development, model drawing, sharing, improvements. We usually put our script in if we've got one. So that's what we use.
And if we're using a slideshow, they'll put the slideshow images in there as well, so that if something does happen to the computer that they're using, they've at least got something they can reference back to show the judges.
And there are some subtle differences in the rubrics from last year, so check it out. Okay, did I answer your question? Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to look at the robot design overview. So basically in the robot design session, the teams get to show off the design process, the little nitty-gritty things they're proud of, the little details, as well as the big stuff. Now, just to be really clear, teams do not get to actually drive their robot. So there's no FLL table in the room. If they want to have some type of code or something that'll demonstrate an attachment, they can, but that's up to them. So what you should be doing is explaining your development process, your team roles, your strategy. You should be describing your code, your documentation. You can demonstrate the robot functions or just move them by hand, how attachments move and operate, and then answer questions, right? You are supposed to be talking about how you got to where you are. And again, the coaches may be welcome to observe, but they cannot help at all if they're in the room. The kids have to deal with this. Now, just to be clear on this too, the kids are allowed to try and direct some of the interviews, so they can do things like say, hey, can I tell you about our code now or something? They don't have to sit there and wait passively for a judge to ask a question. If they can prompt the judge can always say no, but hey, it's a good way for them to get the information across. So robot design fills in the second slot. So you start with the welcome and the innovation project, then you get to this one. 5 minutes each on what you're supposed to do. Now, you are being marked on a rubric, just like core values, which is laid out. So the innovation project, which is laid out just like the innovation project. So you want to check out the different categories. So this is the first one, identify. So we're talking about identifying the strategy. Then we're talking about how teams have worked. So to score high on that, the kids need to be able to explain a clear mission strategy. And that doesn't necessarily take a long time. So before you go in, you prepare for that. And with learning, all team members should be able to show that they've been involved. Now, that's a bit of a gotcha for any of the advanced kids that have been around for a while. They don't get to coast. They've got to show that they are developing and learning new things. Then we get to the design part. What is the effective plan for what you've done? And have you provided a clear explanation? Right? Look at the words I've highlighted. Clear evidence of effective plan. Clearly explain innovative features. So that innovative features thing is a really basically an excuse for your kids to go explain the things they're really proud about. So that's really important they get to do that. Then we get to the create. So did you develop an effective robot? Do you understand how it works? So someone needs to
drive-through testing. COO.
And if someone's talking, you need to mute your mic. Lyndall, can you mute whoever that was? Awesome. Yeah, so functionality, detailed explanation of how the robot, like the sensor capabilities, mechanical function. This is how well they do that thing. Then there is clearly explain your programming. Now, some teams, and I would really encourage this, bring in a laptop or failing that, a printout of your code so you can show the judges what your code is. Now, given that we're able to use any programming language at all at the moment, don't expect the judges to be able to read the code you provide, but if you can explain it, that's what they're looking for. So again, look at the highlighted words for what they're after.
As a programmer myself, good comments. Good comments are gold.
Right. So iterating. They want to see your testing. And they want to see that your robot was improved and your code was improved. So we strongly suggest for that one, keep a change log or just incorporate testing things and show how you responded to it. And comments feature in that as well. Commented code is very, very good. Right. Then we get to communication. This is judging how well they talk. Is there a clear explanation of the robot design process? Is there clear evidence that everyone was involved? So again, you have the same problem often with not all kids want to or are able to talk to judges. I will put a little aside here. If that's the case, make sure your regional director knows that ahead of time so they can tell the judges and give your kids some slack. But the kids that don't want to talk, they can be the ones that hold the robots and move things while other people talk. They can be the ones that are unpacking and holding robots and shuffling things around and working in the background to make sure their team is able to present properly.
Andrew, we've just had someone ask, what are comments in programming?
Okay, so comments are English or plain language text that is incorporated into a program to explain what's going on. So if all you have is code blocks or Python code, then you have to be able to understand that code to understand what's going on. But if you've got a little text block that says, this is where we start moving from base, and another one that says, this is where we turn to activate the hand, then anyone that doesn't understand the code can still see what's going on. If you want help in effective commenting, that would be send us an email and we can run you through in a session. It'll take about 10 minutes.
And you can also download have a look at the guided mission. each section of that is commented, so that will give you a starter.
Yep.
In the Spike Prime word blocks, if you right click on a block, you'll get a little menu that you starts with duplicate, and then there's a comment, and it will put like a post-it note attached to that block, and then you can type in there your comment.
Oh yeah, Ben's comment is observed bring a tablet with a video to play. That is possible to use that. You just got to be really careful that it does not occupy too much of the session, because most of it is supposed to be the kids in person.
Yeah. The EV3 I think has a very similar right click. You should be able to find a comment. If you're using EV3G though, there used to be in the blue section a comment block that you could drop into your code.
It's called EV3 Lab now.
EV3 Lab, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so when you're doing this, you want to rely on your RDES, the Robot Design Executive Summary, right? So an RDES is a template to help teams explain the robot to the judges. It is not a requirement, but it is a very useful tool for getting teams through the robot design session. So you can go in and just answer questions and sort of wing it, but I don't recommend that at all. What I would suggest is going in with a bit of paper and the kids read from it, or use that as a basis to explain stuff. There's no need to put on any kind of show here. What they want is an explanation. So just an effective explanation. There is no, there's nowhere on the rubric marking for a creative presentation. And do remember the time limit. You've got 5 minutes. So I have had some teams say everything they wanted to say in about 30 seconds, and the judges then had to go hunting to try and get more information from them. I've had other teams clearly with enough material to last 20 minutes or more. So you got 5 minutes to talk and 5 minutes Q&A. So when you're doing an RDES, this is the type of outline you want. Start with some robot facts. This is our robot's name. This how many pieces it uses. Yeah, whatever you want. Something fun about it. So robot names typically come under fun. Or the robot, so one last year, the kids insisted one of our robots was possessed. So they used that one for demonstrations, but never ever used it for competition. You want to talk about your strategy, how you score points. You want to talk about the process that got you there. You want to talk about your mechanical design. You want to talk about your programming design as well as actual code. And you want to talk about what's innovative. And then you probably want to take one of the physical models to the judges and show them how it works, one of your attachments or your robot. You can lay it out on a table if you want to bring the table in with you, or if there's some type of surface, but showing how it works. Now, there is no need to describe every kind of detail. You're supposed to be doing highlights here. The judges will ask questions, and if you want to get into the detailed stuff, you can do it there. This is also a really good way to make sure the judges get a whole picture of what you've done. So I would not be here going through every piece of code for your programming section. I would tell your kids to pick 2 or 3 sections of code that you're particularly proud of, show the judges how it works, like show them the program or just describe it to them. And then at the end say, hey, here's a laptop with all our code if you'd like to look more. Okay. And I do believe, yeah, then we get to the, we'll do RDS first. Anyone got any questions on the how you talk about stuff? No? Okay. So then we look at the documentation, just like the innovation project. Well, you can also look at the engineering notebook for this one. So the robot design documentation, if you want to put a 1-pager in, that's good, but you typically want to spend a little bit of extra time on this one. Team name and logo. Summary with pictures is pretty good. Development process is pictures. Print summary of some code, innovations, challenges, and lessons. I believe the engineering notebook provides some templates. What we do in Bucephalus is each week, each session the team is meeting, we take a photo with one of our phones of what each one is up to or a feature they're working on. Then we just stick all of that in a Word doc, and that serves as our development process summary. We'll then offer some highlights of other things like a particular function the kids are proud of or the strategy. So again, you can do something really small, 2 or 3 pages would cover all of that, or even just the 1-pager, something the judges can remember you by, or you can go in and do the hardcore details. Now, again, like last time, this is massive overkill for your average Australian team. We do it only because it's easier to do it at the beginning than trying to remember everything at the end.
So yeah, on that note, we start in August, and the competitions aren't till the end of October, November. So that's a long time for the kids to go back and remember what they did and how they developed their strategy. So it's a really good idea to take notes at the beginning and as you're going through, so that when it gets closer to competition and they're preparing to talk what they're going to talk about, they actually can remember what it was, how they decided on their strategy, and oh, this is what we originally decided on. Is that what we ended up doing? Why not? Or what happened? Maybe they can talk about, well, we wanted to do these particular missions in this order, but it didn't happen that way when we actually came to build our robot and design our program. We had to change what we did, or we ran out of time to do this one because we spent 5 weeks working on just getting this one mission working, so we couldn't do the other 3 we wanted to. They can tell the judges that their journey on what they did. But taking notes as you go is a really good thing to do.
Now, we didn't mention this in the project documentation. How we do this, we'll give each team member, like on this index here, each report, each page is written by a kid. We'll tell them that's your job, do the summary for us, and then we'll compile them into the one document. So gets them used to documentation, which is always a good thing. Okay, any questions on any of that before we move on to core values? Now, remember, this is highlights. We'll go through a deep dive later after lunch.
I think we're good, Andrew.
We're good. Okay, so I will give access to Angie. Do your thing, Angie.
There we go. All right, thank you. I think this is going to work. Awesome. All right, so I'm going to cover core values here at the moment. And again, this is just an overview of what they are, and we'll cover a little bit more in depth later today about how you can go about achieving these and how you can apply them. So I don't seem to have.
Click again, Angie.
There we go. All right, so introducing each of the core values one by one. So we have discovery, which is all about exploring new skills and ideas. We have innovation, so using creativity and persistence to solve problems. We have impact. So this is all about how what the kids are doing impacts the world in which they live, both for themselves personally and then as global citizens. Inclusion. So this is all about, respect and ensuring that there is a place for everyone. And I guess it's probably one of the things I love the most about the first program is it's actually a place where there is a place for everybody. We're stronger at teamwork. We're stronger when we work together. So if you're part of First Lego League, then you by now should have heard teamwork makes the dream work. That's what this program's all about. And of course, fun. And so we enjoy and celebrate what we do. So in terms of, So there are also two other elements of FIRST that are considered, they're not one of the 6 core values, but it's how we display the core values. And the first one is, I'm waiting for the hands to go, gracious professionalism. Yep, thank you. Thank you, Ben Stanley's team there. So gracious professionalism is a way of how we do things. So it's that idea that we are thankful, and I talk to my team about it as being, it's just how we show manners. For kids, we say, where are your manners? Make sure you've got good manners, that kind of thing. Professionalism is just about that. It's that we value everything that not only our team can offer us, our volunteers that are at events, the other teams, what we can learn from other teams, and that we acknowledge all of that aspect. And so if you think about those 6 core values, gracious professionalism is how we display that. The next one is a made up first word. So it's co-opetition. And it's a combination of the words cooperate and competition. And the idea is that as teams, we are working hard at winning against the table, winning against innovating something great, but all the same time, we are working with other teams. And that, it's that idea that, have you really won if you are winning against teams that haven't had the same advantages that you may or may not have had? A 10-year-old winning in a running race against a 6-year-old, not so much of a win if you think of size and ability. So we want to think the same thing. So co-opetition is that way that we can help one another along the way. I know for my team, and I'm sure Project Bucephalus has had this experience as well, we offer our support to other teams. We go on visit with other teams and we share what we're doing and they share with us. And, the teams often invite us because they want to learn from us. And quite frankly, my team often walk away having learned so much more than what they went in there with, because we can learn from everyone, veterans and rookies alike. So where does core values fit within the First Lega League program? So we've talked about that, there is the robot game, there's the innovation. In terms of developing something for the core values, there's not actually something we actually do, present, show to the judges, except that it's in everything that we do. So there's a saying that the robot game and project are what the teams do, but the core values is how they do it. And so that's an element to just keep in mind. So it's, they're 3 pieces of the same puzzle. So the core values is really in everything you do. And I think it's probably one of the hardest areas to judge, purely because it requires so much observation from the judges to see, with a robot design, you can see the robot, you can see their code. With an innovation, you can see the process that a team went through. With the core values, you are trying to observe in the room how the team interact, but you're also trying to capture an idea of their journey throughout the season. And so in terms of where core values fits in terms of the interview process, in terms of the 30-minute interview, so it's clearly the team welcome. So as teams come in, the judges are looking at things such as, how do this team work together when they're coming in to set up? Is everyone participating? Is everyone assisting getting things set up? They're also looking at how the team come across in terms of their team identity and their team unity. Are they a team or are they a group of individuals coming in? It's also here in the core values reflection, which sometimes judges will ask a few questions and provide an opportunity for teams to talk about some of the things they've done throughout the season. Usually this will be a time for the teams to talk about something maybe that they're proud of, something that they've achieved. They'll also look at things like, problems that they've overcome. But really, when you look at it, innovation has 10 minutes in total. Robot has 10 minutes in total. In 3 minutes, we're trying to capture as much information about your whole journey. So with that in mind, keep in mind that it's also reflected through the innovation project. So if we think that, you know, we're looking at the core value judges will be looking at the fact that discovery is a core value and something that you're being judged against. So they're looking and listening while you're talking about your innovation project, while you're talking about your robot design. What did you discover? What did you learn? They're listening for what kind of impact has developing your innovation project had? Have you thought of the grander scale of the impact of your project? What kind of impact has learning elements of engineering in the robot design had on your team? So they're looking for those features as they're, judging. So they may only ask 2 or 3 questions, but they've actually been listening and watching and observing the entire interview. So similarly to the robot design and innovation project, there is a rubrics that covers each of them. Now, this rubrics is probably the least detailed in terms of what exactly they're looking for. And so again, it all comes down to what the team can share and offer. So if we go through the rubrics, I'm skipping ahead. The same as the other rubrics, you've got your ratings up the top. So we've got beginning, developing, accomplish, and exceed, where your exceed is where the judges will write a comment about why they think that you've gone beyond just the standard accomplished. And we've got our 6 categories, then area for comments as well. Okay, so just exploring each of the core values slightly further. So discovery, as I said, it's about exploring new skills and ideas. If we look at the rubrics here, the discovery, line here is team explored new skills and idea. I challenge any team to not learn new skills, whether they're veterans or rookies, to not learn new skills simply by participating. I don't think it would be possible, but what the judges are looking for is that they're minimally observed across the team, inconsistently observed across the team, consistently observed across the team. So this comes down to what the kids tell the judges. What did they learn? Explain that clearly. Make sure that the judges understand that learning took place constantly, consistently, that it was for the entire team. If you have a mixed team of veteran team members and rookie team members, ensuring that it's very clear that everybody learned something new throughout the season. And if each kid has an example of something that they learned throughout the season, they may not need to say it. The judges may not ask, but it's an opportunity for them to think about that. So this statement says here, it's explored both during the innovation and robot design and game. So it's a way of sharing what you've learned. And in this case, there is a notion that rookies have the advantage, because if you are a rookie team, if you are a first-time team, or even a second-year team, you are still on such a steep learning curve in this program, whereas some of the veteran teams have to really think and explore about what they can discover. So moving on to innovation, we use creativity and persistence to solve problems. So again, the same ratings category 1 through to 4. It's around team using creativity and persistence to solve problems. So when we think of innovation, it is that creativity, it is that ability to solve problems in new and unique ways, and not just stopping at the problem, but actually trying to come up with multiple solutions and being creative with how we do that. So really it's that out of the box type thinking that they want to see. And again, judges will listen for examples of this during the judging session when the kids are talking through their innovation and their robot design. So, a robot design judge may ask a question about what's the most innovative feature of your robot? And the core values judge is listening for how many examples might come up, or, why did you create this innovation? What inspired you to create this innovation? the core values judge will be listening to the response, not so much about the answer itself, but how you went about the process, how you were innovative and creative. Looking at the next one, impact. We apply what we learn to improve our world. So this one for me is twofold. It's how the First Lego League program impacts the individual within the team. So the skills that these kids are developing in this program are somewhat amazing. I think probably one thing that makes this program stand out to other robotics and STEM-based programs is that it does have this element of core values, and it is getting the kids to reflect on, you know, just what are they learning, whether it be from the design process. I mean, the design process is applied to everything in any kind of innovation, entrepreneur, project management, any kind, you know, so many industries. It's not just restricted to the tech industry. So thinking about the skills that they've learnt, as well as what skills they've learned and how they can use them for the greater good. So I talk to my team about, you know, it being their superhero power, that some of the things that they've learning now, they can use to go on to change the world. You know, that world might only be within their neighborhood, but it's still part of the world. So again, it really simple comment, team applied what they learned to improve their world. So again, you know, if the team don't have too many things to say about that impact, then they're probably going to score down there at that minimal, you know, if it's inconsistently observed across the team. So if only one or two kids can say, oh yeah, I learned this, or I know that I can now do that, or I, you know, through learning teamwork, I'm now better at functioning in my soccer team, then you're not going to have that same wow factor. But again, while not every team member may necessarily answer for the judge and say, oh, I'm impacted this way, or we're going to impact that way, if each team member has something in mind that they can say, it's really beneficial to helping with that scoring. So yeah, just as it says here, the skills are developed in the program, but how are they applied outside the program? And that's really what the impact is looking for. And we can look at that implication of how the innovation solution might impact the world, outreach, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and further application of any of the skills. Our next one is inclusion. We respect each other and embrace our differences. So again, team demonstrated respect, embrace their differences. Now, in Team Apollo, we are known for playing lots of games. Sometimes I think we play more games than actually do innovation projects and robot games, but that's the way they like to do things. But in terms of playing games, one of the games they like to play is called Same, Same, Different. And in this game, it's that idea that, you know, they all run around crazy, singing, dancing, whatever. And then someone calls out a feature and they have to try and find people that match the same as them. So it might be a physical outward feature, or it might be an internal sort of something they like, something they don't like, you know, places they've been, that kind of thing. And so they're looking and exploring, you know, what's the same with their teammates and what's different. We have team members on our team that are from the same family. And so they think they know each other really, really well, but often they can be surprised when playing games like this. And again, we're looking at how they explore that. Another one of the things that Team Apollo are often quite proud of is that we are a girl dominant team. We do have mixed gender in our team, but we are a girl dominant team. And so anyone who's had anything to do with girls in STEM or the STEM field knows that there is a strong push and strong urge for including more girls into STEM programs. So that's one of those things that the Team Apollo often announce and are proud of, saying, you know, we've made a program, we've made a team that girls feel like they have a big, strong part in it. So some differences for your team to think about in terms of how they're overcoming these is, you know, do you have rookie team members versus veteran team members? How did you merge those two? The girls in STEM, what skill sets do people come into the team with? your varying cultures, neurodivergency and disabilities. How have you made a place for that? And I guess for me, I said before that inclusion is probably one of the things I love most about this program, is that with a lot of sporting activities, kids have to have an element of skill towards it. If you're going to be on a soccer team, if you're going to be on a netball team, a basketball team, if you're going to be on a debating team, you actually have to have some kind of skill set towards that. But if, in terms of First Lego League, there's actually an area that everybody can excel in. I think that's really important to think about from that inclusion point of view. And teamwork, we are stronger when we work together. So I said before, it's, if you haven't heard it, it's teamwork makes the dream work. So looking at the rubrics here, Tim clearly showed how they work together and as a team throughout their journey. So again, the team can have multiple examples of how they work together. That would be, that's great. Examples of what they did, how they went about working together. I'm going to talk a little bit later on when we go into the deep dive about how that works and what sort of strategies you can do. A lot of people think that teamwork is just about team members cooperating, but teamwork involves so many different elements that, as I said, we'll cover later on in the deep dive section. So things that we'll be considering, and again, as I said, we'll go into later on, are around roles and time management and task allocation. And then, of course, fun. We enjoy and celebrate what we do. Do not do First Lego League if you do not want to have fun. The kids should be enjoying it. They should be engaging and having fun. There are going to be moments where they want to pick up their robot and throw it across the room. There are going to be disagreements about, which way they should go with different ideas. But ultimately, outweighing all of that is that they should walk away having fun most weeks from your training sessions, and most definitely at an event. I mean, look, if you can't laugh a ref with a frog hat on, or a judge with a dory hat on, or refs and judges in tutus, then and have a good dance at the end of the day, then this is not the program for you. So from the beginning to the end, fun should be the driving force. Something that was a new aspect to core values in last year's game, in last year's season, is that we now are assessed in the core values at our robot game. And I think this is a great development in the program, in that when you are in the interview, when you are in that 30 minutes, you are actively aware that the judges are judging you on how you interact with each other and how you display yourself. If you cannot, but at a robot game, when things are going wrong, when there's a bit of what feels like a bit of pressure, if your team can keep it together, if your team can continue to show each other respect and other team members, other teams respect, the referees respect, if they can continue to show that at all times and keep up that positive spirit under that pressure, then I think that's a really good raw way of us examining what will happen in terms of the core values. So teams start with a 3. You start with a 3 automatically, and then you'll either go up to a 4 or down to a 2. Fred may want to comment now or later about things that might make you go up or down, but generally teams will start with that 3 and either move up or down, just depending on their skill set.
I think I'll comment to say no comment. Like you say, you start with a 3 and you go up or down, but I don't want to necessarily sort of restrict it. Like, there's a lot of reasons you might go up. Unfortunately, there's a lot of reasons you might go down. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
same as serious.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is this is supposed to be a raw assessment of an organic approach to the core values. All right. One of the other things is Linda went through the awards earlier on in the overview, but there are actually 3 special awards that are given out in the core values area. Now, not every tournament will have all these 3, but these are 3 awards that the judges during the core values session or during the element of judging can select a team for. So we have 3, the Breakthrough Award, we have, which is where a team has developed. So they may not necessarily be good at everything, but they're made a significant advancement, or, whether it be in their confidence or ability. Rising All-Stars. So this is a team that, you can see the potential oozing out of them. They're not quite there yet, but they definitely have that potential. And then we also have the Motivate Award. And again, this is a team that just has the spirit of First Lego League. Their robot may fail, their innovation may not be plausible or feasible, but they encompass everything we want in the First Lego League program. That's the end of the core values brief overview. As I said, we'll cover some of those things a bit later on. So I think it's now back over to Andrew.
Yep.
Unless there were any specific questions in that time.
I'll just skip through the documentation.
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 We're behind, so I'll just skip through this part quickly.
Yep.
So same type of deal. Having a team summary sheet makes it so much easier for the judges to remember who you are. And the fun facts, I love Apollo's team sheets with the fun facts about our team. Have a good time with it.
Yeah. So with Team Apollo, this sheet you can see here, this is what we used to produce for our first years, because that's, was enough and that provided enough information. But similarly to Project Bucephalus, you can move on to developing more comprehensive documents. Again, Team Apollo is a homeschooling team, so developing these documents becomes part of their schooling. The team break this down and develop this. But touching on something that Lyndall said before, there's a long time between August when the season begins and even just, November when the first judging happens. This is a way, if anything, it's a way for the kids to recall what they've done, just how far they've come, what they've achieved, where their challenges are. There are questions that you can have a general idea are going to be asked, and so they can go back through all of their documentation, not just core values, but their robot and their innovation, and see the progress that they've made. The team kids often fight over the copy that's produced of this in Team Apollo. Yes, I'll say that word, they fight, because they want to keep it as their record of just what they've achieved. That's more important to them than, the yellow piece of plastic that they may or may not win at the end. But yeah, this kind of record of all that they've achieved. There's some more, sorry. Okay, core value poster. So it is not a requirement in the Australian competition, but it can be a useful tool. So you will see often international events will call for a core values poster that displays all the information. And that is, again, because sometimes in other parts of the world, they do the judging a little bit differently, and they're looking for the information. So it can be divided by the 6 core values, or and usually it's asking for discovery, cooperation, inclusion, and integration there. The other one is that whereas in the innovation you have a presentation, the robot design you can also have a presentation if you choose. There isn't a need for a core values presentation. However, it's okay if each team member has something that they want to share. So if they're asked about how they do their teamwork, if a particular team member says, oh, I've got the information for that. Number one, it helps delegate what everybody has to remember on the spot in 30 minutes. It's hard to remember everything you wanted to share. So they can have a sort of a presentation or something that they might share. Anyone who's ever judged Team Apollo or been in an event with Team Apollo will no doubt know Team Apollo's amazing chant. Yes, I can still say that after all these years. That they, sing and dance around with in terms of their core values interview, often at the robot table too. Sorry, Fred and refs. Yeah, so the final thing that I want to cover is that teams are assessed on their performance both during a tournament and at the end of the season. They don't have something to show. There is not a robot. There is not an innovation prototype or anything like that. What they do have to show is how far they've grown, how much they've accomplished as a team. So it's how the team acts at the tournament. There are core value reports that can be filled in by other teams, refs, volunteers at the events, judges, and these can be both positive and negative core value reports. Quite often, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be a positive report. It might be something like, this particular team were really helpful in helping us find spare parts for our robot, or this team were really encouraging and guided us through what to expect in the in the interview. Reports also come from the robot game referees and obviously the scoring in the robot game. And these things will all go into account in terms of the deliberation time for the judges. Andrew touched on it before. You may never know whether you received an award because you were the top team in that, or because of in terms of scoring factors, in terms of the numbers, or whether there were other factors to play in that. During your judging session, obviously, it's what the team does in terms of over the season and how they share that during that team welcome, when they introduce themselves, when they identify themselves throughout the entire judging session, and then the core values reflection section as well. And that's the last slide of mine. So now I will hand over to Andrew.
Yeah, I will toss in something, just going back here a moment. It is a very sad thing if adult behavior affects how a team performs. So make very, very certain that your parents understand that the kids are being assessed on how well they work together. You don't want to see any ugly parent behavior. Keep that well and truly out of the way, because that can cause a lot of bad feeling, and you want to avoid that at all costs.
We also don't want to see coaches around the practice table working on the robot and no kid to be seen.
Valid point. If you're a coach at a FLL tournament, do not touch the robot. You can help them carry boxes maybe, but do not touch the robot. Like at a competition, if the kids are at the practice table, I will stand there with my hands held firmly behind my back, so I am not tempted to help.
I would second that as well. And if you feel like you're a coach that just won't be able to help yourself because you're meaning well, I would suggest that send a parent to the tournament table with them, because the parent won't have any idea in most cases of what they've got to do. So they can't help. They can't possibly help, but they can be there for support to make sure that they're in the right place at the right time.
Right. Okay. So we are a little bit behind, but we're now going to hit the robot game. Now, we have one active field in Australia right now, and Fred is sitting on it. So he's going to walk us, we're going to have close-ups of how the missions work and as we go through these. So I'm going to start by running through some of the important rules that people need to know. And then we're going to go into the specifics of the actual game. Now, for those of you that have done this before, take a good look. There are 2 launch areas. You need to be very, very certain about how they work, or very bad things are going to happen. You don't want your kids to be having a bad time at a competition because they misunderstood the rules. Okay, so you must read the robot game rules to understand the game. Now, I would get everyone on my team to read the rules. It is really easy to miss stuff, so read it carefully. Now, that said, there are some top rules that cause problems. I'm sure Fred might be able to offer some others, but we're going to cover the big ones. So listen carefully. Right. All robot game wording means precisely and only what it says. You can find this on page 16. If it's not mentioned, it doesn't matter, and challenge updates may change the wording. If a situation arises that is something's unclear, you get benefit of the doubt, and the head ref makes the final decision. Now, this is the home of loopholes. There are often, well, there are always hidden freedoms in the mission text, right? You may be told to deliver a tractor to a certain area of the field, but nothing is said about the orientation of that tractor. Nothing said you can't take it home, load it onto a cart and push it out. Doesn't have to be upright. Yeah. These are all things that can happen.
Can I, add on?
Also,
Sorry,
aware of Captain Obvious. A lot of the missions this year have got the red bar on them that says, pull me or push me to make this work. In many cases, there is nothing in the rules that says that is how you activate them. So be very careful of that and get your rules lawyers to check out the words. Were you going to say something, Ben?
I was going to say something, actually. I just want to elaborate a little bit. Just want to elaborate a little bit on the direct wording specifically. I forget if it's in the rules, if it's listed in the rules, this particular clarification this year, but if the meaning of a word is not defined, then we're just supposed to use its common conversational meaning. So effectively that covers if there's some debate about what it says based on sort of the word choice and that kind of thing. In those situations,
they got taken out of the rules this year.
Well, I suspect there will still be cases where there is debate about what a word means. In those cases, kind of like it says, if it does not mention it, it doesn't matter. So you're free to interpret it as it sounds correct to you, but unless there is a clarification on it. So if a challenge update updates it, that's a firm, that's not what it means. Otherwise, if I have been asked this question in an official forum and I post an update saying, this is how referees in Australia will read this rule, then keep an eye on that. So that will go out in a couple of different places, but yeah, just want to make that clear.
Yep, thanks, Fred. Yeah, I would have put that on there, but I looked, it's been removed. Cool. Okay, so second big rule that causes problems. All right. Obviously, it says in the rules you can use any software. No remote control of any type are allowed. And because of that, there are no laptops or tablets allowed at the robot game. You cannot be at the table downloading code during a match. You also should be turning off the Bluetooth on your hubs, if possible. And you're not allowed to use the EV3 infrared sensors because it could potentially allow remote control. So when you get to the table, all your code should be on your robot and you should have no device with you. Right. This one is the this one can be a bit of an issue. No two fields are going to be the same. The light levels are going to be different. The wood will be different. Things may not be in the right place. So on that note, you can tell, hey, Judge, that model is built wrong. And that does happen from time to time. If that happens, the ref will make the change pretty quick for you. But otherwise, you got to be ready for things like an FLL table can be slightly different widths, which means the distance north to south can change. And that's allowable, right? There are legal variances in wall height. Isaac used to say it was between 9 and 11 studs. Mats do not have to be taped down, but if they are, they've got to follow very specific rules. Look at page 24 for that. So we've had a couple of times over the years where a team's robot was dependent on a mat being taped down, and they don't have to be. Also, do not depend on the width of a wall or anything outside the table. It used to be a pretty common thing for teams to do wall runners, which reached out over the top of the wall and basically clamped on and help the robot run itself along the wall. And that's obviously a huge problem if there's a skirt on the table or there's light poles or clamps or screws or nails. So if you're going to do something like that, be at your own risk. And this last one, every single one of you, this is going to be brand new. So all really pay attention to this one. When you go to a competition, the tournament will be providing mats. Those mats will be brand new. Your mats that you're using at home will have been worn down after you've had a robot run across them several thousand times. The performance is going to be very different. So if you are relying on any form of dead reckoning, you're going to have a bad time. So did my screen just stop sharing then for some reason?
Sorry, Andrew, that was me.
Yes.
That's me. Stop clicking things.
Okay, I will bring that back. There we go. So
Yeah, we're back.
We're back. So please be aware of that, guys, because there's nothing more demoralizing than having everything that worked beautifully at home fail completely. So on that, we will mention later on, if you've got an opportunity to run your robot on a different team's table, that is invaluable to find out if that's going to happen to you. So find another local team, say, let's do a table swap. You take your robot to them, run yours, they bring theirs to you, run theirs. You find out that you're dependent on your robot, your table being at a 5-degree incline or something like that. So be really, really careful about that one. Basically, though, if the table is different at the tournament, you've got to be able to deal with it.
Andrew, we have a question. What happens if you can't get your robot to work at all on the day?
I would go to well, most effective way to do it is go to pit admin and say, can you please put up a call? We need help. And you'll have half a dozen teams on you in about 30 seconds. If you're at an event with us, we run the robot first aid program. If you're lucky, the magic robot fairy will be there. If you've ever met Lewin with the pink fairy wings and the magic sledgehammer, he will come. Bicephalus runs that. And if any other team wants to help out with that program, bring it on. We're glad to spread it. But every team there will try and help you. I've seen 6 teams clustered around one robot trying to figure out just what the heck was going wrong.
And wasn't it just a cable not plugged in?
No, this was a bit more serious, that one.
That was a bit more serious.
Well, we had the dropped robot. That was fun. Yeah. But basically, and bottom line, though, if your robot doesn't work, get the kids to keep their heads up, get them to keep going, and they will get a lot more respect and admiration from those around them, watching them never give up, than they will pulling the robot together at the last moment.
If I can add something else in there too, is that their robot working on the day impacts their robot score on the game board, but it's just one of all the elements of it. And there's only one yellow plastic piece of plastic that can be won for that. So not scoring on the day, obviously devastating. They've worked hard for it, but there are so many other elements that they can focus on, and particularly someone just put up in terms of their core values.
Yep. Okay.
It was just mentioned, if you are able to have a spare robot, second robot that you could swap out on the day. Someone's hub died mid competition last year. So if you have the funds available to have a second robot that they kids can build identical, have both at competition, but only take one to the table.
Yeah. We'll get into stuff like that in the deep dive. Right. So when it comes to building the robot, Lego only, unmodified unless it's string or the piping. Right. You are allowed one controller in any map. So you build 2 robots, only one of them can be at the table. The other one's going to be back in the pit somewhere. Can't be anywhere near you. Any combination of motors, but you got a max of 4. And that applies even if they're not plugged in. It's not 4 robots active at once. It's 4 motors total. We had one year, I saw a team using unplugged in motors as counterweights. That was not allowed. You can use any sensor you want as long as it's not infrared sensor. And there's no limit on the number of them. Right? There's also no limits on the non-electric Lego pieces. There used to be a rule against the pullback motors, but I haven't seen that in this year's one. That may come out in an update. Right. So read page 17 very, very carefully on what you're allowed to use. Now, I have seen international level events, the best teams in the world, and teams get this wrong. And that's enough to get your robot disqualified. So you really don't want to be in that position. Yeah. So if you've got any questions on any of this, put it up at Slack and on Slack or the chat, and Linda will tell me. Right, the mission models. You are not allowed to take apart a mission model. And that includes taking a loop off or something like that. Now, you are allowed to twist or rotate them. I may get Fred to demonstrate how the dinosaur can move. Right, there's nothing to say you can't adjust it as long as it stays intact. Right, if you combine a mission model with anything, including the robot, it needs to be loose or simple enough that you could instantly free it. Right, so if I can just go yoink and the pieces are separated, I call that good. Is that your standard, Fred?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yep. Right, so no permanent attachments. Right, in setup. Now, after you go through small inspection, you are guaranteed 2 minutes to prepare for the game start. You may get longer, you may not. You need to have your kids practice that 2 minutes. In that 2 minutes, you've got to set up for your first launch. You've got to position your equipment in either home area, and you can ask the referee to be sure something is set up correctly. So, hey, ref, can you just check that little dinosaur toy will actually roll out if we hit the trigger? Something like that. Right? You can also calibrate or reset sensors anywhere on the table that you like, but be very aware of those time limits. Get your team to practice setup in 2 minutes. FLL games can run hot and behind time. You definitely don't want to be the one responsible for holding everybody up. Also, do not touch the actual field without permission. So a referee may say, hey, yeah, go check it. I'll let you check it, but do not touch the table unless they've said you can. Now, I'll say again, that 2 minutes, you are guaranteed those 2 minutes after inspection. You are not guaranteed any extra time, so don't rely on it. Right. When you're launching a mission, the robot and anything it is about to move must fit in the launch area. So that's either red or blue this year. Now that means the launch area ends at the edge of the mat and does not extend over the wall. So it has to fit completely inside that quarter circle. And the technicians cannot be keeping anything from moving. So no gravity hammers that you're holding up by hand, that as soon as the robot moves, you move your hand and they fall down. Basically, if you can stand back and everything's set inside, you're good. Do be aware that cables count. If you've got cables sticking out the side and they're hanging over the edge of the table, your robot is not allowed to launch. Now, depending on what tournament you are, the refs may be a little bit lenient, but our rule of thumb is generally by the nationals, there will be no leniency. You got to make sure that's fixed. Right, this one gets a little bit messy. What happens to the stuff you're carrying if your robot gets interrupted or gets hung up or something? So if you touch your robot while it's active, if it has picked up an object from the field, so say you drive out, you've picked up one of the energy cells, you come back, try to come back, but your robot crashes out and tips over. If that object made it into home completely, you get to keep it. If it didn't, the referee takes it.
Actually, Andrew, that's not my reading of it this time.
Okay, go for it.
I'm sorry. Are you talking about the robot or the object? In that?
Object.
So
The object says
in
the
this year's
equipment
rule,
or mission. Yeah, go on.
it says the equipment or mission models that were in contact with the robot when it was interrupted outside home. So when the robot was interrupted outside home,
Yes.
anything in contact with it. So if the robot is completely in home, you keep it. If the robot is not completely in home, the object is taken.
Yes. Yeah, so the object from the object. So yeah, you can.
So I'm saying even if the robot is partly in home and the object is completely in home, if it's touching the robot, that object is still taken. That's new this year. They've changed those rules.
I missed that one.
Made a little harsher.
A little harsher, but a little simpler, I think. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. If you left launch with it, you get to keep it. So if you drive out with 3 power cells, 3 energy cells, your robot crashes, you get to keep them when you bring it back. If you drop something, once it's come to rest, they did change this one. So if it's completely in home, you keep it. If it's outside home or partially in home, it stays as it is unless the robot changes it. If it's partially in home, if you grab it, you lose a precision token. So if something's sitting half in and half out, you can send the robot to grab it.
It's to expand on that a little more as well. It's actually even more complicated than that, which is annoying. The precision token and pickup is if it was equipment. So if it's something that you brought to the table. If it was a mission model, like an energy unit, then the referee takes it and you don't lose a precision token. Again, you have the choice. You can leave it where it is and then have the robot fetch it. But if it's a mission model, then you can ask the referee to remove it.
So this is the sequence of events for a match. We're going to demo this for you later, but you arrive at the table, you do inspection, it's got to be under the height limit. After inspection, you arrange and set everything up. This is new. You divide the team into 2 groups, 1 for each home area, and they stay there for the rest of the match. Everything it's about, the robot is about to move, must be completely in the launch area and not being held. In the match, the robot can launch from either launch area and move objects between them. You can't. So you cannot have one set of technicians hand the dinosaur to the other side. The robot has to move it. If a robot is interrupted, you lose a precision disk, but the robot can be returned to either launch area. At the end of the game or the end of the missions, you can stop the robot if there's time left. The robot is stopped. And then importantly, it's the technicians that overview the score with the ref, not the coaches. So the ref will go through the field with the kids. You scored this, 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 and this. They have the opportunity to disagree respectfully. Refs aren't always going to be right. And then they've got to sign on that dotted line to say, yes, we accept this. Once they've signed, that's it. No changes to the score will be made. However, they can say something like, hey, I think this was misscored by the software. Can you recheck the sheet? And it will happen. You do not want an adult talking to the refs about the score.
And there is a question here, just double checking you can move robot from one launch area to the other, but not any objects. The robot has to move between them. You can't hand it between them. We'll go through that after lunch when we'll do a demonstration of what you can and can't do at the actual table.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to look through the missions. So have you got your camera person there, Fred?
Yes, she's prepared.
Okay, so the first points. If your robot fits into one of those launch areas, you get 20 points. So I'll stop sharing there.
So
Actually,
Fred, can we see a close up of a launch area?
Yes. This is the right launch area. Position this. And then over here is the left launch area. So as Andrew said, so it's bounded by this red line, this black line, and then the wall. This side of the wall is not part of the launch area. This part of home is not part of the launch area.
okay.
So yeah.
So moving on to mission 1, the innovation project model. Your team can build a representation of their innovation project and deliver it to the hydrogen plant in the center of the field. The rules are, it's got to be at least 2 white Lego pieces in it, and it's got to measure at least as long as four studs long in one degree. It does not have to be built from pieces that you get in bag 1, as long as it meets those rules. So Fred, you want to?
Yep. So this is an example of a valid innovation project. It's at least 4 studs long in 1 dimension, and it's all white pieces. And it needs to be towards this circle, at least partly in the area. So fully in is totally fine. If it's touching the line, then it's partly in. If it's sitting over the line, that is also in, at least partially in.
Yeah.
Because the airspace counts.
Yeah, so there's no rule that says it must be touching the mat.
Mhm.
Right. Now, do bear in mind that the innovation project model is equipment. So if there's a rule about equipment, that counts.
All right, Andrew, there is a couple of questions coming up.
Yep.
So one is about the white pieces starting in the home area. So I think to answer that is your team would use those pieces to make something before you come to the robot game.
Yes.
So the pieces will not be there for you to make at the robot game table. You do that and bring that with everything else you have to the competition. And the other question is about keeping everything in a circular inspection area. Is there any tips on how you do that?
The kids can hold pieces inside the area. So for inspection, you can physically hold the pieces there. But yeah, Tetris is your thing. Now, if you get to a tournament,
and your innovation project model will start in one of your launch areas.
yes, that is part of your equipment. Just like your robot and attachments. Now, if you get to a tournament and you haven't got one of these, if you put the word out to the other teams, help, who's got some pieces, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to get something. Right, mission 2, the oil platform. You get 5 points for every fuel unit that ends up in the truck. And if the truck gets over the refueling station target, you get an extra 10 if it's got a fuel in the back. There are no restrictions in that. That's just as it says, and you can get up to 25 points for that. So I will now spotlight Fred's camera, and you can show us how that works.
See that clearly? Yep. So this is the model as a whole. So the truck is loose. It sits on this little block. And when you, I believe, raise that, it's a little hard to see from this angle, but we're limited by cable length. But this tower contains 3 little black fuel units. And when you lift this bar, one falls down and falls straight into the truck. The way the mission is built, it is very unlikely that it'll fall out. Sort of, as long as it gets knocked out, it falls straight into the truck and it's inside. And they sit inside.
Yeah. How much force is required to get the truck off the ramp?
Not a heap. So it's basically just a Lego axle sitting between these two sets of tires. So with a little pull, it gets pulled off. But it is a pull. You can't, it's not no force. It's not free rolling, but you do have to tug it a little bit to get it to go, and then it's free. Yeah, you'd be hard pressed to push it sideways. There is a blocker keeping it in place, so you can't push it that way. If that's the thought.
Yeah, that's the
easiest
type
to go
of
forward.
thing. Yeah. So we didn't realize that till we looked hard at the instructions and saw it's mounted on that platform.
Yeah.
And where does it end up,
then-
Fred? Where on the table does it get to go to?
We go all the way across the field to there's a small circle here, and needs to be any part of the truck needs to be overlapping that circle if the truck has at least one fuel unit in it.
Now, as an example, there's nothing in the rules that says the tires have to be touching the ground.
Nope.
So it could be upside down.
Well, but we don't want to lose the
That
oil.
is the fuel. You don't want to lose the fuel.
Yeah. Now, there is no rule that cannot be touching equipment at the end of the game. So that means if that is touching your robot or an attachment of some kind, it still scores. That's a subtle thing you need to be aware of. There are a few missions that you do not score if they're touching equipment. Okay, so back to missions. So mission 3, energy storage. So you get 10 points for every energy unit that's completely inside that bin, and you get an extra 5 if that extra cell is removed. Right. Now this is one of those equipment rules. So all energy units stored in the bin may not be touching team equipment. So in other words, you cannot build a Lego box and dump full of cells and dump that box into the storage bin. The cells have to be separate. So 35 points in that one. And the teams have a chance to be a bit creative. This is into the setup rules for those that haven't seen it. One, I think it's bag 15, has a bunch of colorful one stud pieces. You can build your own display wall to decorate the field when it's your turn to compete. So Fred, I will share you. Take it away.
So here's the model. As Andrew was talking about, there's a flag which is very easy to pull on and off. So you can decorate that for a bit of fun. There's absolutely no requirement to. You don't need to do that to score this mission. And then there's 2 parts to this. So there's putting the energy units into the hopper, like that. And then there's a tray underneath it with an energy unit inside it.
Now, can you just shake, just to be clear, there are now 4 energy cells in that model. That one that came out is not one of the ones that Fred just put in.
Correct. So I put in these 3.
Yeah, Shelby, there should be. Yep. Now, how well does that hold it in? How rough can you get and still keep the cell in?
It's pretty solid. Basically, you need to either lift. It ain't going nowhere by sliding. You need to either lift out the unit or lift up the tray.
Yeah.
Basically.
Now, remember the points. Sorry, go Fred.
This sits in pretty well as well. So it slides in and out. Again, there's not much wiggle side to side on that.
So the points are scored by the cell being removed. The tray is not actually part of the scoring.
Correct.
And you can also see the big red Captain Obvious pieces that say pull on me. The same one was on the oil rig. Okay. Move the spotlight.
Could we replace the flag with the one from our own kit instead of building on the existing one. Yes,
Yeah,
that's what you would do. You would use the one that you have from your field kit, and you would take that to competition with you. And before the match starts, you would ask the ref to swap it out for your one.
Right. Mission the 4th, the solar farm. Remove cells from their starting positions. You get 5 points each. If you do all 3, it's an extra 5. Now, I should mention this one. Take a good look at the words completely. Right? That's one of those things that means a big deal. If they are touching the black circles, they are not completely removed. There are no restrictions, so you get up to 20 points for that one. Okay, Fred, you want to show us how that works?
Yep. Nice and easy one. So there are 3 circles on the mat, and on each circle, there is an energy unit. So all you have to do is remove each one fully from its circle. Like you said, if it's partially in, that is not completely removed. If it's sitting on top of something in its circle, it's also not completely removed. And that's a hard balance to do. But yeah, it doesn't have to touch the mat to be still in the circle again.
All right, am I reading the rule book correctly? Mission 3 says 5 points if you remove the energy unit from the tray. Doesn't that mean we want the energy unit outside of the tray?
Yes, you do. So the basic premise is you extract it from the tray, but if you leave it in the tray, you don't get the score. Sorry, yeah, I spoke unclearly on that one. Okay. All good on that one, Fred?
Yep.
Right. Mission 5, smart grid. So if you raise your connector, you get 20 points. If the other side raises their connector, again, the word completely features here, it's another 10 points. Now, the smart grid model may not be touching team equipment at the end of the match. So if your last mission is to drive out and pull on this and stop, if you're still touching this model, you do not get those points. So you've got to make sure you are not touching it at the end of the game. And before anyone asks, these are the rules about lifting the other arm. So Fred, did you have a call to make? Oh, you can demo the model and make a call on that one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is the model that we're talking about. So what you have to sort of imagine in this case, because we don't have 2 tables set up, is that there is exactly the same model flipped on this side in the other field. So when I pull on that, the arm raises, and if both teams do it, then the arms touch, and it's all very fun. So yeah, it's a little bit like there is a. It should be pretty clear if it's completely up or not. There's not like a midpoint where it's half up. Basically, at a certain point, gravity takes over and it locks in place like that. Now, the thing that Andrew was asking about and alluding to is, can my robot reach out and flip up the other arm? And the rule that he had on that slide says that interference is not allowed with the other team's field. So I would say no to that. Personally, the way that I tend to instruct referees on how to deal with things that are not allowed is that if you do it and we can reset it easily, then we reset it because it was not a legal action. So in that case, if another robot came over and pulled this up and then drove away, I, as the referee, would just tap that back down because that was illegal interference. That is sort of pending rule updates. So there might be an update from First Global saying how that situation is dealt with more officially. But yeah, I wouldn't plan for that personally.
Excellent.
There is a question relating to the energy units. So what if one battery ends up partially in another energy circle? Energy unit circle.
So we're saying, what if, say, I move these ones off, but then this one goes into the other circle?
Well, maybe you knock one
Yeah.
into the other circle.
Yeah,
or
that's
partially
it.
into the other circle.
So I roll this one in and it ends up there. It's an interesting question. I lean towards. It's an interesting question. I won't give an official ruling. I might post something later, but I lean towards it's being very difficult to expect the referees to track which energy came from where. So basically, if we see one in a circle, we'll say it wasn't removed. But yeah, my opinion is not fully firm on that because it has been removed from its circle. It's just something else has ended up there.
Okay. So going back to, so this is the collaborative mission. So, and this is also the mission that they give you the code for. So I highly encourage the teams to do this if at all possible. Right, hybrid car. And this one appeals to my innate sense of cruelty. So I'm really interested to see how this actually works. So if the hybrid car is no longer touching the ramp, you get 10 points. If the unit is in the hybrid car, you get another 10. Now, there are no restrictions on this one, but that hybrid unit is not an energy cell and can't be used as such. So 20 points. So, Fred, take it away.
Okay, we see there's the car. Cool. Yeah. So, car is here. It's loose on this ramp. This is the hybrid unit. So you can tell it's the hybrid unit because it has a black piece, a gray middle, and a white piece. Versus the energy units that have a green middle and 2 white pieces. It sits on here. Whoops. And then when you raise this big, look at me, red piece, the hybrid unit rolls into the car, and then the car rolls away. In theory, you can see there the hybrid unit didn't quite make it in. So demonstrate that again.
I sense a lot of frustration with this one.
That time it did make it. So you can see the first time I went very slowly and it didn't quite work. The second time I went a bit faster and it did work. So this is, yeah, like Andrew says, this is one of those missions that's very tricky, very finicky, and a little bit cruel. But
how far does it roll on its own under power, Fred? I got asked that one.
Let's take a look. See if we can get a better angle on that. So if I, 30 centimeters or so. Sorry about the angles. Would it help if we removed the feet?
Yes.
Is that the long-suffering Jay we have behind the camera?
Yes, indeed.
I am the cameraman today.
Okay. So next mission. So if anyone has any questions about these as we go, please ask. The wind turbine. Well, this is the second or third wind turbine we've encountered during the course of our FLL career, isn't it, Angie and Lyndall?
Yep.
It's a popular one. So this has got 3 energy units inside it. Now, if they are no longer touching the wind turbine, you get 10 points each. There are no restrictions on that one. So it's a straight out 30 points if you get all 3. Now, there is something that would be worth just double checking on that one. Fred, if you push that, what are the chances of that actually falling out and stopping at the base and still touching the turbine?
Let's find out. So these are the 3 energy units sitting there nicely exposed this time, unlike fuel units. So if I press this, that's interesting. That one didn't even fall down.
You got to push it hard, I think.
Yeah. So you got to give it a solid push. So generally they do roll enough away, but you can see this one's rolling a bit. So if your table's at a slight incline, you could imagine it rolls back. And that counts as touching if it's braced against it.
So how hard do you reckon you have to push that to make it turn?
Let's see, so if I give it a very gentle push, it does still go, So effectively, you just need to push it all the way in, but the faster you push it, the more force it's going to be thrown outwards. So the first time, it just didn't go at all. Whereas if you give it a good whack, then it goes. But yeah, it will
They look like
drop.
they go anywhere and everywhere.
It absolutely, yeah.
Now, if you do
Which
it
is tricky
3
if you
times,
want to use it for another mission.
is there a difference if you hit it 3 times in quick succession?
Let's find out. So that time I hit it too hard and it just fell off the back.
So would that still work? Would that still count?
Yeah, as long as they're not touching the mission, still.
So yeah, the only
Still works.
So is there less force required if the propeller is still spinning?
A little bit, yeah. There's less momentum to overcome. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, once those gears are spinning, it's a lot easier to push the thing back and forward.
Yeah. If we were able to
But
do
once
this,
again,
if we were able to do this in person, there would be people pushing this right now to figure out how exactly it works.
yeah, I wish I could sort of share the amount of force required.
Yeah,
through
no, that's all good.
video.
No, that's answered most of the questions of the teams that I've dealt with that have been looking at this so far. Awesome. Okay. Mission 8, watch television. Now you have to explain to me, Fred, what the capes are about.
Because who doesn't have a TV watching cape?
So if the television is completely up, 10 points. If the energy cell is completely in the green television slot, 10 points. The model and the energy unit cannot be touching team equipment at the end of the match. So 20 points available in that mission. So.
Okay, so we have our 2 little superheroes watching TV here. And if you press them forward, the TV comes up and this little energy unit pops into the green slot. So I think the sort of basic intent of the mission is what I just did, a slow push and everything just falls out. This green energy unit sits inside this loose slot at the bottom of the TV. TV comes down over it like that. So if I give him a solid whack, the energy unit rolls away. Yeah, there it is. If I give it a gentle push, it goes like that. Any questions about that one?
Yep. So if you've seen pressure, there's been a few years we've had pressure sensitive models. So yeah. Okay, the dinosaur toy. Now I have to say, Fred, I think this is my favorite for just really messing with people. So if the dinosaur toy is completely in the left home, you get 10 points. However, if the toy lid is completely closed and has an energy unit in it, 10 more points. If there's a rechargeable battery inside instead, that's 20 points. Now, here are 2 relevant rules to this one. During a match, only the robot can move objects from one home area to another. And the other one is technicians may use their hands on the robot equipment and mission models when they're completely within home. So if this is in home, you can do all that stuff to it by hand. Right. Do your thing, Fred?
Yep. So here is the dinosaur. As you can see, it has a few degrees of motion. So this comes back to Andrew's point about you can't break it, but you can move it around, fold it up if you feel like it. Now, if I bring over an energy unit, so my robot has brought an energy unit back, then I can, with my hands in base as a technician, my robot doesn't have to do this, I can lift up this lid, stick the energy unit in this slot, and that's quite a firm force down. It took us a while to figure out what was happening. And then the head goes up, and then you close the lid fully. And then to get full points for that, the robot then has to move the dinosaur toy all the way to the other home. Now, when it says completely closed, if you do that, it is not completely closed. And you can kind of tell because the head isn't up. So if you put the energy unit in wrong and then try to force it shut, nothing will happen. So there's sort of one orientation, you put it in, lift the head, and it's closed. Now the other part of that, here I'm using a normal energy unit. There is one rechargeable battery unit on the field, which is green and gray. And if that goes in, it counts for more points.
Can the dinosaur head
That's the
move with the battery in there?
It can
Still have
move
some
up
form.
and that opens the lid a bit. So you got to be very careful with that because if I push it up, the lid comes up. And when I drop it, the lid is still up. So you could count that as not completely closed. So once it's in there, leave it down. You can't push it down anymore. And just drop it off, put it somewhere. Now, I'll point out, I did here say you put the thing in, you close it, and then you carry it over there. There's no reason you have to do it in that order. You can carry this over there and then put the thing in.
Yep. So everyone see where the rechargeable battery is on the field? Yeah. Okay. Any questions on that one? Okay. So moving on. So up to 30 points on that one. So that's a pretty high, that's one of the highest scoring missions. The power plant. So there are 3 energy units in the power plant. You get 5 points for each one that is no longer touching the power plant, and a bonus 10 if all 3 are out. There are no restrictions. So 25 points for that one. So take it away, Fred.
Okay, power plant model. You can see the 3 energy units are arrayed around the outside. If I push down on this red lever, one of them falls out, but you'll notice the other 2 haven't fallen out yet. If I raise this lever, the rest of them go. Now, you can do it the other way as well. So if you lift the red lever first, and then push down that, then they'll go. And they roll forever because they're wheels.
How straight do they roll, Fred?
The 2 on the left roll pretty directly straight into home. The one in the middle goes for a bit more of a journey. So if I do that again. So the 2 on the side have ended up in the launch areas. They wiggle a little bit on the way in. This one has now rolled out because it bounced off the toy. So you've got to make sure that as soon as it comes in, you grab it if you want to keep it. And then this one that didn't roll forwards, it rolled to the side. So you can see here on the model, there are 2 ramps that go all the way down to the floor on this side, but this one just drops down sort of more freely.
Yeah. Can you run that again, only doing the green first and then the red? So, yeah.
The other one, so I'll push that down.
So there's a difference in how they roll out depending on what order you do it in.
There is, yeah. Basically based on which piece of the model it's touching. There are 2. It's either touching this bar on the side. I know it's very hard to see this, but it's either touching this bar on the side or it's touching the bar directly below it. So yeah, there's a little bit of variability there.
All right. Okay, so
Andrew, sorry, we have a question. Can technician on the right home pick up the robot and hand the robot to the technician on the left home? Where in the rules does it talk about this section? So if I'm in red, can I hand my robot to the person in the blue to start running it?
So let's say I'm standing here, I'm in the blue area, I have a robot, can I hand it over?
Yeah, is that allowed?
To someone. That is a very complicated question. The answer is the rules are a little bit vague on it. So what the rules say is that you're not allowed to move anything outside your launch area except the robot. It doesn't necessarily say that you are allowed or aren't allowed to move the robot itself. I think there'll be an update about this. So I wouldn't plan your strategy around being able to hand it, because I think it will be disallowed. But I think the way it's written right now, you technically can.
It's on page 6 of the rules. It says, during a match, only the robot can move objects from one home area to another. When a robot is interrupted, it can be returned to either area. So we're working on the assumption that you can't.
Well, so the other factor of that is on the during the match inside home page.
Yes.
Rule 4 says technicians may not touch anything outside their home area or cause anything to move or extend outside this area except the robot. So technicians aren't allowed to walk from one to the other, but it's not clear if they are allowed to hand the robot only over. And I would work off the assumption that it's not allowed, because I think, like I said, I think that will be clarified. But yeah, clear as mud.
Yeah. Well, I'm like 80-90% certain they're going to say, no, you can't do that.
Me too.
Right. Mission 11, hydroelectric dam. So if you get the energy unit out, you get 20 points. And that's it. There are a few gotchas in exactly how this is actually set up. So Fred can show us how that works.
Yep. Okay. All right. So there is a energy unit sitting in the bottom of this mission next to this free spinning propeller. Now the propeller has a heavy end, so it always sits down the same way. And then up here is a water unit, which is a blue version of an energy unit. Now, if you lift this little bar, the water unit falls down, hits the propeller, and knocks out the energy unit, which incidentally is one of my favorite sort of thematic pieces of this field. And that's pretty much all there is to it. There's not all that much complexity around.
Yeah. The gotcha is where the blue water is sitting out the front. The one with the loop. So if you move.
Oh, this one. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were thinking there's a reasonable chance that if that's there, the energy unit can ricochet and end up touching the dam and not score.
Possibly.
So how does it act? How does it act if the water's not there?
If the water's not there, it slowly rolls away. Again, with the water, so I can hold this water down, pretend there's a robot sitting in front of it. So it's probably one of those things that will depend on how flat the table is, how flat the mat is. If the table's on a slight angle, this can roll very smoothly. On this particular table, it is rolling that way, so it's hitting the water unit and not coming back. I would hazard a guess that it will always be rolling in a direction, and if that happens to be back, then it will be touching the model. If that answers the question.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we've got a couple of missions to do, and then we're having lunch. So we're going to go through a little bit. We're nearly done. Share the screen. Right, mission 12, water reservoir. For each looped water unit in the reservoir, touching the mat, that is a requirement. They must touch the mat, 5 points. And if a water unit is hung on a red hook, 10 points per hook. So just to clear something up, there are 2 hooks, so you can score 20 points on that. You can score 1 for each hook. Now the loop on the water unit doesn't count. That can extend out of the reservoir. And anything in the reservoir on the hooks can't be touching equipment at the end of the match. So you can get max of 25 points on that mission. Take it away, Fred.
Okay, so 3 loop water units, they start here, here, and here. Their loops are in specific directions. So on the map, you definitely won't be able to see this in the video, but there's a line on the circle, and that specifies that the loop is facing this way, not this way. So referees should not be just randomly placing them like this. You know where the loop is going to be, it's going to be like that. The caveat to that is that these loops are kind of finicky. It's hard to get them exactly right. So that won't be accepted because that's clearly wrong. But if it's straight up and the loop is kind of bowed backwards because of just that's how it lives, then that it may be a bit loose like that. But yeah, they all start in the same direction. You take them, put them in there, or hang them on that hook.
Now, the loop doesn't count as a water unit to be completely in. So you show us what that looks like.
Correct. So that still counts. It's touching the mat and it's completely inside the reservoir. That does not count. Can I do? Let's see that one. That doesn't count because it's not completely within and it's not touching the mat. I'd also say if you could pull this off. That does not count. So it is touching the mat in the reservoir, but the whole unit is not inside.
I have one request from one of the kids. If you push that like a bulldozer, does it actually go in, or is the field too high?
I push it like a bulldozer. Let's try. So set this up.
No.
I would say it's too high, but it's not impossible to believe. If you're pushing it from this side, it need a little bit of a ramp, I think, to get it all the way in.
Yeah. So
there is a question: can you put 2 water loops on one hanger?
You can, but it doesn't give you any more points.
Yeah.
So yeah, you score per hook. So this is 20 points. This is 10 points. And that's also 10 points. So you only get points per hook if there's at least 1 unit on there. So that's 20 and that's 30. Or is it? No, sorry, 25.
Awesome. Okay, sharing the screen again. So match 13, power to X. For every energy unit completely in the hydrogen plant, you get 5 points, but maximum of 3. Notice there is no equipment restriction on this one. So these can be touching equipment. Oh, I didn't update those points. Whoops, 15 points for that one. Show us how that works, Fred.
Yep. So here's our hydrogen plant. I'll try to put these on the green so they're more visible, but energy unit, energy unit, energy unit. So completely inside, that doesn't count. Where's another one? That still only counts as 3. And that's fine. You can put your innovation model touching it in the way, whatever. That's all fine.
Cool. Toy factory. For each energy unit in the slot at the back of the factory or stuck in the hopper, you get 5 points, maximum of 3. And if you release the mini dinosaur, you get an extra 10. So that gives you up to 25 points. And none of the engine units may be touching team equipment at the end of the match. Go for it, Fred.
Yeah. This is the toy factory. So there's a little dinosaur in here. That's the part that you want to double check is set up correctly at the start of each round, because it's very easy for it to not be. But basically, if I put something in here, there's a little lever and the toy is released. Similarly, if I drop something in here, it falls into this hopper. So these are the energy units counting. Each one counts the points. Or if it's in the hopper, that still counts.
Is there room for 3 in the hopper?
Yes. There's even room for more, but of course that doesn't count for anything.
Yeah. But yeah, the rechargeable battery does not count as an energy cell.
Correct. I was just using a
Yeah.
size guide. And then yeah, dice was released. So this counts. You don't have to take this anywhere. But yeah, if it's set up poorly, so say the wheels are off track, then releasing it may not get it all the way. In this case, the referees would probably rule it as released anyway, because it was obviously released. It was just badly set up. But yeah, good thing to double check.
We have a question related to the hydro, if we can just go back to that one. The question is, would putting a water unit on the dam latch count? They are red and could be considered hooks.
So you're suggesting putting them on there?
Yeah, so the question is asking, would that count if they were put on there?
My instinct is no. I remember there was an update about red hooks. I can't remember exactly what it was though. And my computer's over there. But I would go off the assumption that no, unless updates are otherwise given.
The update was the clarification. There are 2 hooks and they're specifically named as hooks, 1 and 2. So the answer is no, you can't score off the side.
Excellent.
Okay, now move the spotlight and share the screen. Right, rechargeable battery. So if you get energy units in the rechargeable battery zone, maximum of 3, you get 5 points each. Do be aware the rechargeable battery is not an energy unit, and the energy units in that area may not be touching team equipment. Now, one clarification, the rechargeable battery does not have to be in that area to score those points. Had a few people asking me about that one. So that's up to 15 points for that one. So Fred, you're spotlighted.
Another simple one. The area is bounded by this black line. So that's points, points, and points. Nothing changes, nothing changes. That would be completely within the area, so that doesn't count. Balance that there somehow, that doesn't count either. Clear?
Yep. So you can ask more questions about these later if you need to. We're just trying to rush through to get catch up on time. And lastly, we have the precision tokens. So 50 points if you have all 6 at the end of the game. Still 50 if you've just lost 1, but after that you start to lose points. So Fred, do you want to talk about that one at all?
I guess I can. Yeah, I haven't actually pulled them out of the kit here, but yeah. So you get these 6 red tokens. You'll hand them to the referee during a match, and the referee will keep them somehow. That's kind of up to the referee how they want to do it. And every time you interrupt your robot outside of home, you lose 1 token. And if you look carefully at the scoring, the first one doesn't actually lose you any points. So you are legally, happily allowed to touch the robot once outside of home and interrupt it without losing any points. It's exactly the same as last year on that respect.
Cool. Okay. And I do believe that brings us to the end of the robot game rules. So if there's any questions, we can answer them now. Otherwise, we're going to go to lunch. And
Can we purposely pick up a robot midfield so that it can get to home more quickly?
yes.
Yes, with conditions. So as Andrew went through, if the robot is outside of home with something that it has picked up outside of home, then you lose that if you pick it up midfield. There's also a rule that if you interrupt a robot and that scores you points, then those points are not scored. In some situation, imagine the act of picking up the robot scores you the points, then you lose those.
So a good example,
Yeah.
Fred, if you demo that, by say push the truck at the TV.
Oh, that's
Oh,
TV. Yep.
Yeah, so if you grab it before it pushes too hard or something like that. If that's
So if I now retrieve it like that, that would be sort of one of those questionable ones where we would say, would you have, scored those points if you hadn't interrupted?
or if the robot is pushing the truck towards the target zone and you grab the robot at the moment it gets there.
Exactly. So then, yeah. That's the kind of thing you don't want to be using the interruptions for. The other thing we had a lot of last year, or personally I saw a lot of it, was, again, if my robot now is driving out of home, picks something up, and then I interrupt the robot. We had people lose hundreds of points because they thought that was fine, whereas because they did that, this was taken away by the referee because it started outside of home. Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, if your robot takes something from home and then you interrupt it and you're like, actually, I want it to be over here. And then you launch from here, that works. You'll lose a precision token, but if you have 5 left, then that doesn't impact you negatively.
So you got one tactical use without penalty.
Exactly.
Okay. Are there any other questions coming up? Okay, well, if you think of any over the lunch break, put them up on Slack and we'll answer them as soon as we get back. Shall we go an extra 10 minutes for lunch since we're 10 minutes behind, Lyndall, or we make it up?
Hang on, let me look at the schedule. We do have Luann coming on at 1:30 with us, so yeah, we do have a little bit of time. We can
Cool.
maybe back at 1:35.
Yeah. So I'll leave the call up, but we'll mute ourselves and just leave the screen up. So you guys can, go get some lunch, think about any questions. And if you've got anything you need to know, let us know and we'll let you back on the call if you drop out. So thank you very much, Fred and Jay. And we will talk to you again soon.
Absolutely.
So everyone can turn their cameras off at this point.